How do we know if people are on? Oh, because it'll show on my other screen. I might have to hop off there.
We're live.
We are live.
Are we live?
We are live.
Well, welcome.
We were in the back room getting our makeup on, and all of a sudden, here we are.
Yeah.
Awesome. As you hop in, maybe tell us where you're from, where you're coming from. And then that lets us know that you're joining. So, welcome. We're here with Ken Snyder and Gary Peterson. Ken's the executive director of the Shingo Institute. He's got a lot of experience in business, international business, supply chain, and currently interacts with a lot of very impressive companies and organizations through the Shingo Institute. And then Gary Peterson of OC Tanner. Gary, 40 years at OC Tanner.
Almost 38.
So he's seen a lot of things at OC Tanner and has had the chance to interact with a lot of interesting companies and help them along their kind of journeys of continuous improvement and excellence. Well, we're going to attempt to give you a sense of what we're going to do at the Future of Work, Future People of Work conference. Let's give you a little information on it. And then we're going to jump into just a conversation about work in the future and maybe simulate some of the activity there. So this thing, the future of people at work. I went to Detroit last year in 2024, and I kind of registered at the last minute. I think at the time I was working with you, Gary, at OC Tanner. Now I work for Lean Enterprise Institute, but I remember being interested because of the people who were going to show up, and it seemed different. It was like, wait a minute, where are all the keynotes? Who's going to be talking? But I looked at the list of who was going to be there, and I was like, oh, this is going to be exciting and interesting. One thing that I try and do when I go to a conference is I kind of corner the speakers. I'm a little obnoxious, I'm sure.
No, not you, Tyson.
Hard to imagine.
Never.
But I think it's Tolan who told me, you know, if you go spend time at a conference, you can really just hope for like one keynote or to take away one or two things. And if you get one or two talks that help you out, it's worth it. And I've always been like, no, I should get more. And so I would systematically find the people who were interesting and try and talk to them. And when I went to Detroit and this symposium, it was a little strange, but it had some of these what called liberating structures, and it had all these kind of folks from industry who were practicing kind of trying to advance their organizations. And I could have that conversation in a non-obnoxious way with multiple people at a table in a collaborative format. And I just found it was a tremendous way to really get a lot more out of an activity that was less conference-based and more symposium and discussion and practitioner ways. But I remember on my way there, I ran into you, Ken, at the airport, and you're like, "Oh, hey, Tyson, guess what? I just guess where we're doing this next year." And you said, "I was like, where?" And he said, "OC Tanner." And I was like, "Does Gary know?" Because I didn't hear anything about it yesterday when I left. So
that's funny.
Maybe you could just help.
I'll tell you, I'll fill in the conversation between one day and the next. Is there's a group of us leaders of different organizations within the lean community, Shingo being one. Oh, pull it up. Yeah, those are the seven. And we had a quick meeting to talk about what do we want to do next year. And in the meeting, we talked about trying to find somebody who could demonstrate how organizations can get better if we, as their partners, worked better together. And so we had this theme of better together. And Jamie Bonini of TSSC said, why don't we go to OC Tanner? I think they've used more of our resources than any other organization. And that resonated with me. And I said, yeah, OC Tanner would be great. And they've got a wonderful meeting room too. And so we decided right then and there to talk to OC Tanner, and I called Gary, and Gary said yes. So that's why we're at OC Tanner this year.
Yeah, and I remember when I went back, I was like, Gary was like, what did I get myself into? I mean, besides OC Tanner having a fabulous campus there and a beautiful spot in Utah.
Wonderful opportunities to go and observe too, because they do great work and they're willing to share the great work that they do. So
I guess, Gary, I would kind of ask you, how would you say, why? I mean, I was at OC Tanner for a while. What fueled like shamelessly taking from anyone and everyone you could? It seems like at some point it's like, wouldn't it just be easier to adopt one model or one philosophy or one set of things? What's kind of driven the years of doing things a little different?
Yeah, when you reference shamelessly stealing, people ask us when they come. I mean, it takes so much time to host people, and they say, well, why are you doing this? Like, we borrowed so much from everybody. We can't even keep track of where everything came from anymore. So this is just kind of our way of paying it forward to show gratitude. When we began our journey, 35, 36 years ago, the term lean hadn't really been coined yet. And we were like, well, what are we supposed to do? And I saw that HP video they made back in the 70s of one piece flow. And I was like, yeah, that works. Right. And that's what we went after. And I think it's just kind of been that way ever since. Is we see something that works, we grab it. And, early on, we are a high volume job shop. So before there were a lot of companies in different industries applying lean, the message we heard from a lot of people was, oh, you can't do that because your cycle times, vary so much. And, I think you just got to keep watching, just keep looking, keep learning. And no matter what conference we go to, Shingo, AME, LEI, we go visit a Toyota plant, something with catalysis. Every one of them has different types of people doing different types of work, different types of companies and industries, different types of approaches, and there's just always something to learn. And we feel the same way when we go visit a plant. Some people you walk in and your first thought might be, oh, these guys aren't very good. I'd say, no, look around. They're doing something good, something that you can borrow and steal, as you said. I like to use borrow, Tyson, maybe, because then I can give it back. But, when you come to OC Tanner, you see this incredibly diverse workforce, people from all over the world here. That diversity of thought and way of being and background experience, I think, makes all the difference in our problem-solving capabilities. And the same is true of whatever methodologies you pursue. You see something you like, figure out how to apply it. Never apply it exactly the same way you saw it. Apply it the way that makes sense to what you're doing. That has served us incredibly well. Actually, just one other thing I'd say about that, if you don't mind, is that we have dozens of systems that we use, most of which we've copied from somebody, and they're each of them. The owner of those systems is various people in the factory, from directors all the way down to team members, depending on the system. And the whole expectation of that system owner is make the system better, sharpen it up. Let's improve it. So when people come here, they're like, yeah, I was here 5 years ago. It's different. I'm like, yeah, we grow. Everybody needs to grow. So that's my simple answer. Is that a simple answer? That's my answer to that.
I think that's pretty simple. Maybe Sarah, we're going to switch over to kind of trying to simulate a little bit of what might happen at the symposium. And hopefully we can crowdsource some topics. And then Ken and Gary and I can maybe discuss or poke at each other a little and see what comes out in terms of the future of people at work. So Sarah is going to help get that up. While she is, I do want to make a comment on Gary's comment, but let's get this question out. What are the things that will shape the future of people at work? Right? What are you worried about? What are some of the challenges that you're currently having? And then additionally, as you pop in this word cloud, if you want to drop some topics into the chat, that would be great too. Because if you're a participant in this webinar and you see a comment in the chat and you see someone and you're like, that's my challenge too, or that's a topic I'm keenly interested in, just click on their LinkedIn and add them and see if you can start the conversation before you come to the symposium, so you can continue the conversation at the symposium and bounce it off others. But real quick, to Gary's comment, one thing that I think is unique about OC Tanner, and this is for helping maybe people who come in, is while we've seen organizations and as they evolve through the years, they might shed their manufacturing capability to overseas, or they might decide to narrow their focus and become singularly focused on one thing. The unique piece about OC Tanner is they've carried their history with them. So the manufacturing didn't leave. They built, maybe you can just talk about that, Gary, the diversity of the type of functions that you do at OC Tanner to give people a sense of the types of things they would have the chance to see and bounce off when they come there.
Yeah. So when we began our lean journey, we had a single product, our legacy product that we were making. The market demands constant change and upgrades and new types of products. So we have 6 different value streams, different types of products that we make with different types of materials. And as you walk through the facility, you can see kind of the evolution of the product line, but all kind of tending to the basic lean thinking of how do we do this in the most efficient way? Most importantly, how do we do it so that the people who are making the product can be in the middle of the decision making about how to make things better? I think that's what's most visible here.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just add, you've got a decent sized tech department who's adopted Agile and is working on those structures. You've got the intersection of multiple legacy systems in tech. You've got, there's just a robust set of different work models that you might see at OC Tanner. And so there's context to be able to have those conversations, both with people at OC Tanner who will probably be joining different discussions and about the things you see.
Yeah, in fact, to that point, our tech teams are designed the same way our production teams are designed. Small groups of people, no more than 8, we find, for optimum decision making and problem solving. Give them good metrics, give them a good connection to the purpose, give them accountability, let them drive results. And the tech team runs just like the factory does. And J.O., who is executive VP up there, he's going to have a turn during our tour to talk about how tech does that.
That's great. So maybe we can pull a topic here. Let's feel free to keep putting things in the word poll, but let's drop it off the screen for a sec. AI is smack
in the middle
of this word poll, and that's a fun topic.
Well, it'll be a topic of conversation at the symposium too.
Yeah.
I think even our last interaction, Ken, I think you and I had some discussion where someone was extolling the virtues maybe of AI and tech, and I was maybe leaning into the other way and being like, some of this stuff is really encumbering the workflow and the ability to get things done. Maybe you could just share some of the chat.
I've had a chance to visit a number of companies that are using AI as just, and I've seen the same thing over the years with other new technologies. So it's applying AI in our organizations is not that different, and I think the same rules apply. But a lot of organizations are using AI and using it in a way that makes people more productive or reduces defects that are happening in the production facility, or predicting maintenance needs because they're monitoring data that is not easily accessible by humans, and so on. So what I've seen is the best organizations have already started tackling AI and figuring out ways that it either reduces defects, improves productivity, enhances the quality of the product and service that they provide, and so on. And so it's when technology is applied in a useful and purposeful way, make sure it's part of your improvement program. Do it and embrace it. Don't ignore it. Don't naysay it. Don't say, well, we're never going to do that. Now, with AI, there are some downsides, some potential, as you mentioned, things that get in the way. And part of that is the stuff that AI can make up from whatever it pulls, whatever source it pulls it from, or whether it pulls some false information that happens to be out on the internet. So those are things that can be corrected for or prevented, poka-yoke, if you will, with AI. But I am very convinced that the best organizations are the ones who are going to figure out how to use AI in the best ways to help improve their organization. And what I have seen over the years with Shingo recipient organizations is because of their purposeful implementation of technology, they tend to spend about half as much money as their competitors do, because their competitors are looking at tech, just a tech without a purpose. So they buy a whole bunch of it and overspend. Yeah. And the companies that are really purposeful are purposeful about their tech, and they spend less money and they get a bigger bang for their buck. So their productivity is roughly twice as good for half the spend, or what I would often refer to as a 4X factor. Half as much, twice the benefit. And we've seen this over and over with different organizations in different industries. I think the same is showing to be true with AI too. They're effective at implementing it. They spend less on the front end, both in terms of how they evaluate and implement it, and they get more productivity out of it in the long run. Yeah. I would say one more thing I wanted to add. When I say purposeful, that purposeful engages the people in the process. They are talking about how could we use AI to better our process, and as they understand the needs in their process, what system or whatever it may be, it's people driven, and the people are engaged, and the people, it's not there to replace the people, it's there to be used by the people to make their work better. And so I would put that as an important factor to make this 4X result.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great comment. So I would say that AI is working its way into our entire global enterprise, and we are using it extensively. And we have not had any layoff as a result of it. It's just helping us do more, helping us do it better, helping us do more with less, which is the whole idea of continuous improvement and lean. So I see it as a great tool that helps us. We're helping our people be comfortable with it. We have a monthly leadership meeting for all team leaders, trainers, managers, and up. And we just spend a couple of minutes in each of those meetings talking about different applications of AI. We figure the more we talk about it, the more we put it in front of people. I remember the thing you did, Tyson, where you showed them some searches you had done, some things you had learned. It just kind of expanded people's thinking about, oh, I could do this. And a lot of the problems that we couldn't solve before, I think are now coming within our grasp. I mean, the ability to take big data and just analyze it and give information that I don't think we can figure out is very powerful. We're writing code with it in our tech. We're going in front of our customers with it. We're a recognition company, so we give them a place where you can write a nice note to somebody, and we're taking that note and saying, hey, this is a little bit sexist. Maybe you could fix this, or do you really want to say it that way? And people are appreciating it. In fact, it's astonishing, like 80 some odd +% of the recommendations that AI is giving for improving leader comments and peer comments are being taken. It's like, yeah, I want that. I want to be better like that. And then you mentioned, Tyson, our platforms, SAP and cutting through all the different departments, the use of AI to help us figure out the smooth flows, the value stream, all the way through everything has been invaluable to us.
So Todd asked for an example of where I've seen AI used to reduce defects. So let me answer by saying one of the industries I had a lot of experience in was the electronics industry. I made parts that went into printed circuit boards, Printed circuit boards are one area where I have seen AI used to reduce defects. Printed circuit board has hundreds of connections between the different devices that are in it. And in my generation, so 20 plus years ago, we used probes and tested everything. And it took more time to test the printed circuit board to make sure it was functioning right than it did to produce the board. And so you have a production soldering process, and then you'd have a test process that was really the bottleneck. And now, because of visual inspection, the inspection of printed circuit boards and the data that it can collect and the way it can view things and then see, you can program it to identify potential defects. It can scan a board in a nanosecond. I don't know how long it is. It's less than a second anyway, less than a second. And then can flag any problems immediately, test them, the exact spot where there might be a problem very quickly, and move on and do it all within the same cycle time it takes to produce the board. And so productivity is much better. The quality control, the level of defect control is much better. The data collected is much better because AI and the visual inspections that are 100% visual inspections that are going on. So there's an example that I've seen in an industry I'm close to.
Let me give you another simple example that we had a gentleman who he's now a manager, but he was a team member at the time, Chinua, and we went over to his team to do a visit, as we do every few months, to kind of see what's going on in the team. And he showed us some code that he had written using AI, where he showed me two products and said, which one's good and which one's bad? And I looked at him like, I don't have the eye, that our people do. So I was like, they look the same to me. He showed other people and they're like, yeah, this one's good, this one's bad. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't see it. He put it under a scanner. It looked at it, it blew it up, and then immediately said bad, good. It adapted that quick. It saw something that I couldn't see, but I'm not the ultimate quality test here. But it just made a job that maybe would be hard for me, and made it entirely possible. Brilliant.
That's great. I think, Ken, I think when we discussed, you had some examples of like doctors doing it too, and then. Oh
yeah. So if you want, I can. So there's a wonderful product out for these are primary care physicians, and I saw a demo at a conference last year where primary physicians, they spend typically about 10 minutes with a patient who's come in for their annual checkup. And then it takes 15 minutes to write up the insurance paperwork and the medical records from the visit. So it takes more time to write up the documents than it does to see the patient. And with this AI tool that's now available to primary care physicians, it will write up the insurance document, it'll write up the medical records, and it'll do it automatically during the physical. And then it takes about 5 minutes for the doctor to review it and correct anything that's incorrect about the write-up. So instead of 15 minutes, it takes them right now about 5 minutes. And so they can see more patients, they can spend more time on patient care and less time on bureaucratic paperwork.
That's a great example. Yeah. I think one trend I've noticed is if the tools are adapted and used to improve the individual capability and to augment the worker, the person in the delivery flow, it's quite positive. When it's a blanket turn on this.
That's why I said purposeful to begin with. If you're doing it with a clear purpose, it can really make you more productive and probably improve the quality too. Yeah. I'm guessing the AI is, because the doctor is spending less time checking the details, they catch more details and correct. I think the quality is probably better when you have better flow, like that we know in manufacturing. Better flow makes better quality. I think it's true for physicians too. You get fatigued in filling out the forms. Yeah. But if AI is doing the bulk of the work, it's a lot easier for them to make sure it's right. Yeah. And so I think you get better quality medical forms, you get better quality insurance forms too, because there's a good flow to it.
That's great. So let's pop up that word poll again and maybe just add some. The hope is you come to this conference, or even if you're conference symposium, Eric will get like it's a symposium, not a conference, Tyson. But you're seeing comments in the chat that the folks that are going to be here are going to be very interested and have applications where they've seen it successful, applications where they've seen it failed, applications where we really just haven't nailed it yet. And one space that this is maybe to ask people to come and help me with is, while I love AI and tech has opened a lot of doors, when I observe people in their work and in their workflows, I look at the technology that they're interfacing with, and sometimes it's team and team member enabled, and sometimes it's team and team member encumbered. Technology is, and I mean, we have great folks like Rich Sheridan, Joyink, and some technology best practice partners in terms of how they do things. But I think there's a challenge that I don't think has been solved, which is how are we optimizing the workflow and looking at these various factors that are popping up to improve one piece, and how is it enabling performance versus encumbering it, and what are some mechanisms to help bring awareness to that, to improve the lives of the people who are working in it and reduce their burnout and fatigue. So that's an ask to the group. Come, bring your ideas, corner me, tell me what you're doing, show me what works, because I'd love to learn more from people out there. Should we choose another topic to hash out?
Yeah. Next most prominent one is learning, it looks like.
Okay.
And it's adaptability, collaboration. Those are like there, and communication. For me, those all connect very tightly. If you believe in a learning organization, if you believe that people have this untapped potential, this ability to make great things happen, then I believe you would put in place kind of what would allow them to be free in their decision making. Teach them how to make good decisions, give them the good data, let them drive the business, and that is what brings adaptability. That is what brings accountability from team members.
Let's unpack that a little. The concept of both adaptive learning, creative organizations, and how we, where does that happen? Where does it not? Where are we seeing it break down?
Well, let me give like two parts to that answer, if I could. One, from a personal experience, I had the opportunity of starting up two different greenfield facilities with brand new workforces, and what I found is the better trained people got, the quality of their improvement ideas went up dramatically. At first, the ideas were simple and more things you'd put in a suggestion box than things that really improved a process, if you will. And as people got better trained, both in terms of quality and productivity, and understood and how to solve their own problems, their ideas would turn more into, I need help with doing this because that would make it better. And so I've learned from that experience that learning is an important part of the improvement process, and it really enables people. I'm going to tell a story of visiting Gary. He may not remember this, but this was maybe 9 years ago, not too long after I became the director of the Shingo Institute. I visited some of the organizations that had received Shingo prizes 15, 20 years earlier, and just wanted to track what they were doing over time. And Gary and the others that I visited all said the same thing, that they kept getting, for years and years, 10 to 15% productivity improvement year over year over year. And then they saw an inflection point, and the inflection point was their improvement, their productivity jumped to 15 to 20%, like a 5% improvement. And the fact that I heard the same story from three different people with the same explanation just kind of blew me away. But they all said the same thing. Our people got so good at solving problems and understanding everything that's going on that they just get better and better over time at doing it. And so we're making improvements faster now than we ever have. Gary's going, yeah. So he's. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that conversation, Gary, but
I remember every conversation we've ever had, Ken. I relish them all. Relish them all. When we began our journey, we didn't all speak English. And we're like, well, if people are going to communicate, if people are going to solve problems together, we got to have a common language. We chose English, and we had to teach for years to get people to a point where they could communicate. I think that's important. I think teaching, when you're teaching skills like problem solving and analytics, everyone learns differently. And you can't just have a one type of class where everyone comes in and sits down, they walk away with full understanding. You got to be thinking about the individual. That's where I think the coaching system is so important, where the manager is talking one-on-one. What do you need? What are you learning? What haven't you got yet? How can I help you? Thinking about the person's individual learning style. I think that if you're really intent on people doing great things, you have to open up a lot of doors.
I'm curious. I worked at Tanner's for a good chunk of time, and it's a beautiful place. And the momentum that was already created when I showed up there was tremendous in terms of creating this environment that enabled leadership and team members to experiment and grow. I'm curious as to the tip in that momentum, maybe both for Gary and maybe things that Ken, you've seen where you visit an organization and you're like, this may be a bit soul depressing. And what, is it just about making great organizations better, or can we really take some challenging work environments? And what's the tipping point that allows them to shift from like hide, protect, challenge to grow, interest, curiosity?
Yeah, we had a very bad work environment when we started. It was full of fear. Managers were just bearing down on people, telling them to shut up and do the job. That's what we had. And when I first started pulling team members in to hold team meetings, this was 35 years ago, no one even look at me, let alone say anything. And our team meetings at that time were like 15 minutes long, because that's all the silence I could handle at one time was 15 minutes of quiet, me asking questions and looking at people. What we had to do was we had to train all the management and get them believing that they could be successful with a different style of leadership. And we had to train all the people to believe that they could be successful with a different type of work. And then you got to get those two to blend together. And it takes time, and it takes concentration, effort, and momentum, and just continuing to focus. But I remember I was in Mass Mutual visiting with them, and I was in a client success meeting, a team meeting. They were all standing up, and the leader was in front of them. There were like 18 people, 15 were engaged, 3 were at the back, furious. And the 15 people were not, and they were answering questions. They were doing stuff. The 3 in the back had their arms folded. They were just scowling. And after the meeting, the leader came up to me and said, "Hey, I noticed you looking at my 3 people back there. I'm sorry about that." I said, no, you don't need to apologize. They've lost. They've lost, and they can't figure out how they lost. It used to be all the people were like that. And now everyone else has come along, and now there's 3 people and it's to the point where those 3 people really only have 2 choices. They can either adapt to the new way of being, or they can leave and go work for some poor schmuck company down the street who doesn't believe yet, the people can come to work with energy and enthusiasm and problem-solving thinking. So, and I think that's what you have to do. You just got to stick with it until the culture changes.
Yeah. There's 2 big principles that we have in the Shingo model that help that. One is respect every individual, and that can be phrased in different ways, and it certainly includes respect human potential, respect the humanity of people, or humanism of people, or whatever. It's kind of an all-inclusive respect people. And if you respect people and you do it as a leader with humility, meaning you're willing to listen, willing to let them show what they're doing and what's important to them, and then figuring out how to assist them in the ways they need to get better, you can turn around a culture pretty quickly if the leaders are all on board and they're all doing this. They're showing the respect for the people and helping them get better And as they help people get better, the people will perform and be engaged, and will take over most of the improvements themselves because they're engaged in where to go with it.
Yeah. I don't know if in the comments, Sally Gadlin out of Massachusetts, she nails it on the head. The two pieces that I think you need is autonomy and psychological safety. You got to give people autonomy, and it has to be safe for them to experiment, to try things, to learn, to fail and regroup. And autonomy and psychological safety have to be allowed by the leadership. And frankly, the old style of leadership, there's none of that. And so turning that around so that people realize, okay, I can be successful in this new way. And so the manager, speaking to the other principle, in addition to respect, is humble leadership, where the leader has to begin, instead of being, I know best, the leader has to believe that the people closest to the process are the ones best suited to make improvements to the process. And then they start asking questions and starting to teach creative problem solving and innovation. And that's when they become humbly effective.
So learning is a key to all of that.
Yeah.
I remember before joining OC Tanner, I worked in the meat packing industry and and the culture was substantially different. But at that time, I kind of knew if I could create a space where my people could be protected, and they knew that I would take the time to understand, regardless of where the shots came from, they would kind of open up and grow.
Yeah.
And a thing that maybe I'm noticing now, because working with different organizations that are at various stages of maybe cultural maturity for learning and adaptive organization, is I always try and find one leader who cares in a way, not just cares generally, but cares genuinely about their people and the organization. And then if they're like humble and curious, how do I amplify that person and take them through learn by doing exercises to really start this transformation process? And I'm always open to additional ways, but it seems, the challenge is real when it's a large organization and you're attempting to affect kind of change that way. Any tips for people who are in those environments?
I have just one thought on that, Tyson, is that I hear people, at conferences saying to me, well, I don't have executive support, so I can't do anything. And I'm like, yes, you can. Stop being so defeatist. You have a circle of influence where you can do exactly what you just said. You run interference forum, you teach them, you make it a brilliant place to be, a brilliant place to work. And I think it catches from there. I tried initially to bring the whole global enterprise along and found it was easier to bring the polishing department along. And then other people would say, hey, can we do what they're doing? Add it, grow it, develop it. You can make great things happen in a small space and then grow it.
Agreed. A lot of organizations that we work with, it started somewhere and grew. Those that eventually receive a Shingo Prize, for example.
Yeah. And even just thinking to some of the organizations we've spent time with, there's always a few icons that emerge, and not as like heroes or firefighters, but as like examples of like genuine, curious learning. Like they've just continued on this path and are open. Similar to kind of what we've seen with Gary, where he's like, I want to steal more from other people. Steal's not the right word, but
yeah. Hey, there's a question in the chat about how do you adjust performance goals for leaders so that they're focused on the right things? And I would suggest that initially most goals are set up incorrectly. Most goals are set up in a way that actually is counter to what you're trying to do. And when we were trying to convince team members that they actually could have an influence on quality and efficiency and safety, they didn't believe they had anything to do with it. They thought that's the manager's domain. The way we solved that was by giving them metrics around quality, efficiency, delivery, and safety, and then asking the manager to talk to them about those results every week. It was just a 5-minute conversation, but that conversation, I think, changed. It started to melt the ice between management and team members, that connection where we're really starting to see each other as more human. I think anything that helps the manager see team member as being more powerful, it's this capability that Ken was mentioning, builds the respect they have for them. And that's the primary thing I would go after first.
One of the things I've noticed about OC Tanner and other places that are really great at improvement is the metrics that they measure aren't always KPIs, but they measure preventive or predictive behaviors instead of measuring the outcomes of those behaviors. You actually measure the behaviors themselves. And that was an important insight for us as we were studying organizations such as OC Tanner about, you know, how do you drive results? Well, you got to have the right behaviors to begin with, and actually measuring those behaviors helps you to get those kind of leading indicators measured, if you will, the behaviors, the actions that people take.
That's an interesting idea, because you can usually see them when you show up, but how do we create some visibility and measurement? There's a question in the chat that I'm curious about, or a statement about accountability. There has to be accountability for leaders.
Yeah.
What does accountability look like at that level when you're trying to transform?
Yeah.
You know,
let me make a preliminary comment, and then others can adapt to it if they need to. We don't use the word accountability in any of our teachings or any of our literature or anything else that we do. And the reason for that is because accountability is too often linked to assigning blame. And we do not want blame to be part of the topic of conversation. We want to avoid blame because people don't intentionally do things wrong. About 98% of the time, occasionally there's people who sabotage stuff and so on. And the research in the academy has indicated it's about 98% of it is simply there's a bad system or a bad process that is causing people to do bad behaviors, but not really wanting to or intentionally doing it. And so if there's a problem, then it needs to be fixed in the process or in the system, but not by blaming people. And accountability too often is linked to the blame. So we use who's responsible for improving that if there's a problem. So, whenever somebody makes a mistake, that's an opportunity to learn, take advantage of it, learn, get better from it. So, celebrate the idea. Don't blame anybody for it. That's one of the reasons that we don't use the word accountability. Now, with that, Gary, you can answer it from.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I tell you, when we first began our journey, I was having a difficult time getting the managers to see a new way of being. And there was one lady in our press teams, the manager of our press teams, who got it. And she was talking it. She was saying, let's figure out how to get the teams involved in decision making. Let's empower them, let's engage them. And I was so happy that I had somebody who was like driving it more than the others were. And 3 weeks later, she decided to retire. And I was like, what are you doing? You've got it. You can do this. And she says, no, I can't do it. I totally believe this, but you know what? I can't stop yelling. And I didn't know that she was a yeller. I asked around afterwards. Turns out, yeah, she's just yells at people. And she held herself to the point of saying, look, this isn't acceptable in this new way of being. And I asked her, would you go around and visit with every other manager and tell them why you were leaving? And I got to tell you, that landed powerfully with everybody, because they realized we really are talking about a change in behavior. That helped a ton. And I think just letting, we did so much training where we practiced stopping and listening, asking questions as opposed to giving answers. It's practice. It's really just a lot of practice.
That's good. I think my approach changes over the years. I think and you've heard this before, Gary. I'm like, spend the time with the managers and the leaders that are interested.
Yeah.
Ignore the others, and then eventually the ones you can always find, 2 out of 10 that are like really curious about the methods and want to experiment and do things. And if you can build momentum, that works. I've adjusted a little because I've found out that sometimes like ignoring some of those managers to surge forward isn't always helpful. Like I've just recently, even I was in a situation where I was given feedback to some leader and they're like, why didn't you just come talk to me like earlier? Why didn't you try, like, just offer me the opportunity to engage and explain what you're doing? And that was kind of a miss. I like this. I've started to kind of think of when I hear accountability, I'm like, okay, the accountability starts with go to the Gemba, ask questions, and show respect. And that, whether it's the shop floor or the huddle or the management behaviors, where are the things that are happening that are the deficiency? And my experience has been if I start there, I can usually make discoveries that allow me to help get a person to the next step to be helpful to those around them. But it continues to change, my method.
I totally buy into that. And there was one department here, they were all guys, very much a union mentality, stay out of our shop kind of idea. And eventually they had to integrate into the mini factories that we were creating, but they were hard. And so I left them alone. I went after the easier pick-in, and as people came along and asked, I did what you were saying, that you want in, come on in. They were the last group I went to, and I realized afterwards that I'd done those people a great disservice by not trying to bring their manager along. And I think why didn't I? I think I wasn't totally confident. I was feeling kind of vulnerable. I wasn't sure, of where I stood with everything. In hindsight, I should have gone to the manager and just said, hey, look, sooner or later, you're going to have to do this. And we just should have had that honest conversation with him. It would have helped a lot. I think it would have served the people better who eventually had to come. But I think I waited too long.
Yeah, it's always tricky balancing like your own emotional energy to keep giving in that way. And I mean, sometimes it feels like you keep asking somebody out to go eat lunch and they keep turning you down.
I'll go to lunch with you, Tyson. Fine.
Oh yeah, we got it. I got what I needed. Oh, that's funny. Other thoughts? I mean, maybe we're kind of nearing the end of the time. It's hopefully it's given people an example of the types of discussions we can have.
So those are examples of discussions, but I would encourage people to come. There's other groups of discussions. One I've been heavily involved in is higher education of lean. How do we create a great student learning experience in the field of organizational and operational excellence? And we're going to have a group of people at the Future of People at Work Symposium focusing on that as part of what we do, so we can learn from each other and share best practices and maybe develop some things that are collaborative, such as some case competitions and benchmarking with each other and whatever it may be. But we think there's a chance for us to improve the student learning experience by working together with other universities. And so we're going to be actively involved in that as part of the Future of People at Work. And so if any of you are interested in joining us, feel free to just shoot me a note and I'll make sure you're included in the conversations about that topic. But there's going to be other breakout groups on various other topics, such as AI and learning and things like that we've already talked about today.
Yeah, that's great. I think the other reason to come is we need you all. Every one of you has unique experiences and backgrounds. And I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to learn from you, and getting us all together at the same time, talking about what's working, what could work, what needs to work now and in this new environment. It's an important time in my mind.
Yeah, there's a set of really specific people I'm excited to bring together again. Some people who I think are doing incredible work in both tech and understanding how maybe agile design thinking, even business process reengineering. I know that'll make some people cringe, but how these maybe techniques and ways of working have developed. And then I know we have this strong, right? We know that how do you network this capability in a system that doesn't lead to chaos of like everyone doing their own thing, but how do you build a cohesive system of adaptive learning organizations, and where are those examples, you know, that we can see it working, and people who are making progress there. So I'm excited to see some of the folks show up, and I know that each of the institutes and groups participating also have some objectives to move through, and I think that's what's great about the structures that we have. Other thoughts before anything exciting you're working on that you're like, please check this out when you come, or things that you've heard?
Man, we've covered a lot of ground. So,
well, take advantage of the tour of OC Tanner, because it's a great place to work, and they've done some really, really amazing things there. So it's wonderful to have a host that can also provide so many good go and observe opportunities for us. So come and learn. If nothing else in the symposium interests you, it's worth it to go see OC Tanner just in and of itself.
well, so to that point, I think walking, you know, I ask people when they come, who told you to come? Why'd they tell you to come? They say, they told me I got to get on the floor and I've got to talk to your people.
Mm-hmm.
And they get out there. What they see is a lot of the things that people have been saying in their comments, this caring for each other, this interaction, these connections, teams who are focused on working together successfly. It's just a real positive vibe. Super proud of the good feeling that I believe ought to exist in the workplace all over the world. That's what we need.
Yep. My personal goal is everybody should be able to thrive at work, find meaning in the work they do, find purpose in the work they do, and thrive in that environment.
That's our purpose statement. We help people thrive at work.
Better together. So if you pop over to the website, you'll be able to see, and you'll even be able to engage with different communities if this has sparked your interest. I think we reduced the price to make it accessible to even more. I think Sarah even she has a slide. So this is the dates. Join us here in Salt Lake. There's lots of great things to do.
And I assume the QR code takes you to the registration site, right? Okay.
They'll take you to registration. The link's probably in the comments too. And I want to say it's under $1,000. I want to say it's $500 or $600.
$499, Tyson.
Okay.
It's under $500.
And if you scroll down in the webpage, you can see some of the people who are going to come. So often you'll look at a page and be like, who's going to speak? Therefore, I'll come. I also like to look at the registrants and see who I'm going to be able to have great discussion with and start to understand and put test some of the theory with practical experience and practical exercises. So we hope to see you there. We hope you join us. You had a deep breath. Ken, you were going to say something?
Nope. Just about to say goodbye to everybody.
All right.
Ready to say goodbye.
Thanks for joining us for a few minutes, and feel free to reach out directly or through the Future People at Work page.
Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sarah, for running the slides.